I came here to Westmead on Saturday the 31st of May 2025 to ask Donna Davis MP some questions about gender equality. Donna Davis is a member of the Labour Party and our officially elected representative for the seat of Parramatta to the state government of New South Wales. I met Donna during her election campaign. Donna recognised me and subsequently tried to avoid being interviewed by me. When I finally managed to ask her some questions, I pointed out some examples of explicit acts of sex discrimination against men spanning from a century ago to the present day. As you watch her answering my questions, I would like you to take note of Donna's reaction. When faced with explicit examples of sex discrimination against men, there was a lack of surprise, there was a lack of concern, there was a total absence of any commitment to address the issues I raised. Donna Davis clearly recognises the concept of equality must be applied, but fails to condemn any of the explicit acts of sex discrimination against men who make up half the constituents she claims to represent. Donna's reaction to me, as if she was speaking to a child who had just failed the most rudimentary test. As you watch the interaction and take stock of the questions asked, I would like you to understand the reasons for the conclusion I reached more than a decade ago. Well, I'd like to ask you some questions about gender equality. So first of all, just to get on record, you support the concept of gender equality?
Yes, I do. Okay. And are you recording me at the moment?
I am, yes.
Okay, all right. Let me just give me a second.
Yeah, I think you were talking to me.
Yeah, I was. We'll come to my
well, it's my turn. It's my turn. I waited patiently to see you this morning.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. We'll come back up.
But it's my turn. I've been waiting patiently and quietly to see you.
Details.
You have, yes, yeah.
You live here in Westmead?
I do, yes, yeah. I live there. That's my details there.
Okay, rightio. Okay, we won't be a moment.
Okay, ready?
Well, I haven't given permission for filming at this stage. So.
First of all, it's a public place, so I'm allowed to film. Second of all,
you are allowed to film,
yes.
But I also, you can film, but I also have the opportunity to say, look, I'd rather not be filmed while
that's
I'm
fine.
answering questions.
Thank you. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I want to record because I've been fobbed around for 25 years now with these questions, and I'd really like to get people's answers to these questions on record.
Okay, well, how about you give us the questions and we
can I've gone.
Yeah, what are the questions?
I've listed some questions there.
Okay. All right, we'll start off and I'll see how I can go.
Okay, so first of all, we just want to confirm that gender equality, you support the concept of gender equality.
Well, yes, I support the concept of equality in Australia and everywhere for people, yes.
Excellent, right. More difficult question. When the Titanic sank, Captain Smith gave the order, women and children first. So do you condemn that as an act of sex discrimination against the men on the ship?
Whenever you are talking about things that happened historically, you've got to take it in context. I mean, we're talking about a time many years ago, so I couldn't make a decision on what was happened on the Titanic in the 1930s or 20s.
All right, well, perhaps a more recent and relative question. What about condemning conscription of men by the Australian government in 1977?
Well, I think that there were very a lot of concerns about conscription. People have different views, and
but you said you support gender equality, so do you condemn the conscription of men into the Australian Army as an act of sex discrimination by the Australian government?
Look, I'm not going to respond to that because I don't know enough about what happened at that point in time. I couldn't clarify with you whether or not that was the case or not.
Okay, all right, well, let's get it to the most recent sort of examples of this.
Sorry, do you have a question you need to ask? Okay, just, yeah.
Let's bring it up to more relevant times. In 1984, the Australian government introduced the Sex Discrimination Act. The Sex Discrimination Act, when it was introduced, was sexist because it only made reference to gender equality for women. There was no specific reference to applying gender equality to men. So what I'm trying to drive at is that the reality of our society is we deny the existence of discrimination against men, and we refuse to apply the ideology of gender equality to men. That we live in a sexist society which fails to represent the issue of gender equality on behalf of men. If we come right to the present moment, I went to an event in Sydney on the 4th of May this year. The event was Walk for WAGEC. So WAGEC is the Women and Girls Emergency Centre, and they were raising money for their cause. And I got to speak to the organisers, and they said that they were only funded to provide services to women. So that is a specific and explicit act of sex discrimination against men, which is currently being perpetrated by the state government. I just wondered if you have any comments on that.
Well, I would suggest to you, like I have to other people who've been here today, that if you have concerns about the way organisations are funded, the way that government funding is distributed, that please send me an email or we can take your
I've been trying that you've got my details, and I've been trying it for 25 years, Donna.
Right, well, I'm happy to do that for you so that we can get a response. There hasn't been a Minns Labor government for 25 years, so I'm happy to get a response for you.
It's actually not a shot at the Minns government or the Labor Party. We're talking about systemic sex discrimination, which has been protracted in the Australian society for the last 50 years, and it spans both sides of politics, and every state and federal government there has been over the last 50 years. So it's not a particular shot at you, the Labor Party, or the Minns government. It's a shot at the whole of our society, which refuses to acknowledge the existence of discrimination against men, and when you blatantly point it out, it's met with refusal. We live in a society which refuses to do anything about it. Raises the question, my understanding is that the fund for WAGEC is administered through the Minister for Women. And so what we have is a circumstance where the Minister for Women is actually sponsoring and funding discrimination against men. Now, the Minister for Women was brought in to try to address discrimination against women, but it's now being used as a vehicle to support and perpetrate discrimination against men. So it's completely failed in its mission to deliver gender equality, as has the Federal Office of Sex Discrimination Commissioner. There has been.
And if you've got concerns about these things, it's very complex what you're asking me.
Yeah.
So it's best that you put it in writing, and I'm more than
I've been doing that for
address that.
25 years,
have you written to me before?
It's a wild goose chase. I guess it gets sent from one place to the other and then back again. I've done it for 25 years now, Donna. So here I am, front and centre, asking you.
Answering your questions as one elected representative is not going to be the answer you're seeking.
I understand.
So if you want a more holistic answer, then the best thing to do is to write to me.
So apart from sending me on a wild goose chase, have you got any comments to say about the questions that I raised this morning?
No, I've answered what I've given you a response as to how I feel that you should respond. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks.
Our most fundamental prejudice favours women. It is profound to the point that men fail to recognise even the most protracted, widespread and explicit acts of sex discrimination perpetrated against men by women and perpetrated against men by ourselves. I do not deny or condone the existence of discrimination against women. I am simply pointing out the complete, total and prejudicial failure to recognise discrimination against men.
As we look back a century ago, we recognise discrimination against women in the lack of voting rights, the lack of education, the lack of financial independence, but we fail to recognise any of the explicit acts of sex discrimination against men. When the Titanic sank, men were expected to die to save the lives of women. This ultimate and explicit act of sex discrimination was perpetrated by men against men. We fail to recognise discrimination against men in wars and military conscription in the many historic examples throughout the world. Conscription, which was last enforced explicitly against men here in Australia in 1972. We fail to recognise explicit acts of sex discrimination against men by an organisation which provides emergency accommodation exclusively for women and girls, which has existed since 1977 and is currently sponsored by our state government to this present day. These are not isolated incidents, but only some of the many and historical examples of explicit sex discrimination against men which are hidden in plain sight. For more than a century, the whole of the free world has recognised discrimination against women, but has failed to recognise discrimination against men. The only plausible explanation: the whole of humanity is prejudicially blind to discrimination against men. The exposure of discrimination against women is met with outrage, condemnation, and resolve for change. Even on the rare occasions where the most explicit acts of discrimination against men are exposed, they are met with indifference, denial, and the refusal of a society which could not care less. The principle of gender equality is not a hard concept to understand. For approximately 50 years, gender equality has been defined by our government as women's rights to compare every aspect of their circumstance, expose aspects of disadvantage and discrimination faced by women, and to pursue equality with men. This concept and definition has been embraced to the benefit of women for more than a century by the whole of the free world. For men, the application of the same concept and principles of gender equality are overlooked, denied, and refused. For a century, the whole of the free world has been led on the issue of equality by ideologues whose core leadership contains sexist hypocrites with a malicious contempt to what is fair and equal to men. Feminism will be defined as a corrupt ideology intent on the wholesale exploitation of humanity's most fundamental prejudice for the exclusive benefit of women and to the detriment of men in a society which has refused to apply the same principles and concepts of gender equality to men.